It was a sunny afternoon in the bustling heart of an American city. The sky was a brilliant shade of blue, dotted with cotton-like clouds lazily drifting past towering skyscrapers. The streets below buzzed with the steady hum of traffic, honking horns, and the rhythmic chatter of pedestrians. Vendors called out from the sidewalks, selling hot dogs, pretzels, and fresh lemonade to hurried passersby, while children clutched their parents' hands, tugging them toward toy shops and ice cream stands. Amid this lively scene, a young man named Ryan weaved through the crowded streets on his sleek, black bicycle. Ryan was a 22-year-old college dropout with a flair for thrill and rebellion. He wore a faded denim jacket over a white t-shirt, ripped jeans, and black sneakers that had clearly seen many adventures. His wavy brown hair peeked out from under a backward baseball cap, and his green eyes gleamed with mischief and a hunger for excitement. Ryan lived for adrenaline rushes, skateboarding down steep hills, climbing forbidden rooftops, and most recently, racing through traffic on his bike. Today was no different. He zipped past cars, narrowly missing bumpers and startling drivers. Pedestrians gasped and stepped back as he whooshed by. Ryan smirked every time someone shouted at him to slow down. He felt invincible, like the city was his personal playground. Rules were meant for other people, he thought. He craved attention, the stares, the gasps, these were his fuel. As he sped past a busy intersection, a police cruiser parked nearby caught sight of him. Officer Mark Davidson, a seasoned cop with over 15 years on the force, watched Ryan's reckless antics. Mark was in his early 40s, with a sturdy build, a sharp jawline, and a demeanor that commanded respect without needing to say much. He had joined the police department to serve and protect, and he took his duty seriously. Seeing Ryan's dangerous behavior immediately raised a red flag. Mark flicked on the cruiser's siren, the piercing wail slicing through the city noise. He maneuvered the car skillfully, pulling alongside Ryan. Over the loudspeaker, he ordered, "Pull over to the side of the road now." Ryan glanced over his shoulder, his smirk quickly turning into a scowl. He knew he should stop, but a wave of defiance washed over him. He felt the eyes of drivers, pedestrians, and even the people on balconies watching him. Stopping would make him look weak, he thought. He wasn't going to let some cop ruin his moment. Instead of slowing down, Ryan pedaled harder, weaving even more aggressively between cars. Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his patience waning but his focus razor-sharp. He activated the car's siren to its loudest setting, signaling to other drivers to clear the way. A tense chase ensued. Ryan cut through a small park, startling a group of children playing soccer. One of the soccer balls rolled into his path, and he barely managed to swerve around it, almost crashing into a bench. He laughed loudly, exhilarated by the narrow escape. Behind him, Mark followed on foot, having parked the cruiser at the park entrance. Years of training kicked in as he sprinted steadily after Ryan, calling for backup on his radio. Ryan reached the park's exit and shot back onto the main road, his lungs burning but his spirit still fiery. He felt unstoppable. The wind rushed past his face, and the adrenaline coursing through his veins made him feel like a superhero escaping from a villain. But the city wasn't on his side. As he turned a sharp corner, his back tire slipped on a patch of spilled soda. The bike wobbled violently, and before he knew it, Ryan was flying through the air. He landed hard on his side, skidding across the asphalt. Pain shot through his arm and hip, but his pride hurt more than his body. Mark flicked on the cruiser's siren, the piercing wail slicing through the city noise. He maneuvered the car skillfully, pulling alongside Ryan. Over the loudspeaker, he ordered, "Pull over to the side of the road now." Ryan glanced over his shoulder, his smirk quickly turning into a scowl. He knew he should stop, but a wave of defiance washed over him. He felt the eyes of drivers, pedestrians, and even the people on balconies watching him. Stopping would make him look weak, he thought. He wasn't going to let some cop ruin his moment. Instead of slowing down, Ryan pedaled harder, weaving even more aggressively between cars. Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his patience waning but his focus razor-sharp. He activated the car's siren to its loudest setting, signaling to other drivers to clear the way. A tense chase ensued. Ryan cut through a small park, startling a group of children playing soccer. One of the soccer balls rolled into his path, and he barely managed to swerve around it, almost crashing into a bench. He laughed loudly, exhilarated by the narrow escape. Behind him, Mark followed on foot, having parked the cruiser at the park entrance. Years of training kicked in as he sprinted steadily after Ryan, calling for backup on his radio. Ryan reached the park's exit and shot back onto the main road. His lungs burning but his spirit still fiery. He felt unstoppable. The wind rushed past his face, and the adrenaline coursing through his veins made him feel like a superhero escaping from a villain. But the city wasn't on his side. As he turned a sharp corner, his back tire slipped on a patch of spilled soda. The bike wobbled violently, and before he knew it, Ryan was flying through the air. He landed hard on his side, skidding across the asphalt. Pain shot through his arm and hip, but his pride hurt more than his body. Mark arrived seconds later, breathing heavily but still calm and composed. He saw Ryan trying to get up and immediately approached with caution. Ryan struggled to stand, clutching his scraped elbow, and glared at Mark with pure hatred. "Stay down," Mark commanded, his voice firm yet even. "You're going to hurt yourself even more." Ryan ignored the warning. Fueled by anger and embarrassment, he pushed himself up and lunged at Mark, shouting curses. His fists swung wildly, his face red with rage. Mark sidestepped, grabbing Ryan's arm and twisting it behind his back in one smooth motion. Ryan yelled in pain but continued to resist, kicking and writhing like a trapped animal. By now, a crowd had gathered around them. People recorded the confrontation on their phones, some shouting encouragement to Ryan, others urging him to stop. A few people gasped in shock, while others shook their heads in disapproval. Among them was an elderly woman clutching her shopping bag, her face filled with concern. "Why are you doing this?" she cried out, but Ryan couldn't hear her, or didn't want to. Mark kept his composure despite the struggle. He finally managed to maneuver Ryan to the ground and quickly cuffed his wrists behind his back. Ryan's face pressed against the rough pavement, his breathing heavy and erratic. Even in defeat, he kept cursing, shouting about how the police were out to get him, how society was rigged against people like him. Mark stood, taking a deep breath and wiping sweat from his brow. He looked down at Ryan with a mixture of disappointment and sadness. He had seen this too many times, young people throwing their lives away over pride and impulsive decisions. Backup arrived moments later, two more officers stepping out of their cruiser. They helped Mark lift Ryan to his feet. Ryan's clothes were torn, his skin scraped, and his face red with fury. His bike lay twisted on the road, a symbol of his failed escape and reckless choices. The officers escorted Ryan to their car. Mark retrieved the bike, tossing it into the trunk. As they prepared to leave, a few people in the crowd shouted questions at Mark. "Why didn't you just let him go?" someone asked. "He was just a kid," another yelled. Mark paused, turning to face the onlookers. "Because he could have hurt himself or someone else. This isn't a game." His voice carried authority and a hint of sadness. The crowd fell silent for a moment, some lowering their phones and looking away. Inside the cruiser, Ryan sat in the back seat, staring out the window with a blank expression. His anger had subsided, replaced by a hollow numbness. His mind replayed the chase, the fall, the arrest. Every moment felt surreal, like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Mark got into the front seat, glancing at Ryan in the rearview mirror. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he focused on driving, navigating through the busy streets toward the station. But his mind was full of thoughts. He thought about his own teenage son, about the paths young people chose, and the moments that changed their lives forever. After a few minutes, Mark finally spoke, his voice calm and almost fatherly. "You know, you could have really gotten hurt today. Or worse, you could have hurt someone else." Ryan didn't respond. He kept staring out the window, watching the city blur past. Deep down, he knew Mark was right, but admitting it felt impossible. His pride was a fortress built high and thick. At the police station, Ryan was processed and led to a holding cell. Mark filled out the necessary paperwork, detailing the incident, the charges, and his observations. As he wrote, he glanced occasionally at Ryan through the small window in the cell door. Ryan sat on the bench, hunched over, his head in his hands. The hours dragged on. Ryan's mind was a whirlwind of regret, anger, and confusion. He thought about his mother, who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. He thought about his little sister, who looked up to him as a hero. He thought about his friends, who always cheered him on during his reckless stunts. What would they think now? Would they still think he was cool? Meanwhile, Mark finished his shift and sat in the locker room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He ran a hand through his graying hair and sighed deeply. Every arrest weighed on him, but the ones involving young people hurt the most. He remembered being young and making dumb choices, but he had been lucky to have mentors who guided him back onto the right path. He wondered if Ryan had anyone like that in his life. Later that evening, Ryan's mother arrived at the station. Her face was lined with worry and exhaustion. She had been working a double shift at the diner when she got the call. She rushed over, her mind racing with fears and questions. Mark met her at the front desk. He explained the situation calmly, giving her details of the arrest and what would happen next. She listened quietly, tears welling up in her eyes. When Mark finished, she took a shaky breath and nodded. "Can I see him?" she asked softly. Mark hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Of course. I'll take you to him." He led her down the hallway to the holding cells. As they approached, Ryan looked up and saw his mother standing there. His heart sank. The sight of her, her tired eyes and trembling hands, shattered the last of his anger. He felt a deep, gnawing shame spread through his chest. "Ryan," she whispered, stepping closer. "Why?" Ryan couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down his face as he buried his head in his hands. His mother sat next to him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. She didn't scold him or yell. She just held him, her own tears mixing with his. Mark watched from the doorway, his expression softening. He knew this was a turning point for Ryan. A chance to reflect, to choose a different path. He quietly stepped back, giving them privacy. After a long while, Ryan finally looked up at his mother. "I'm sorry," he choked out. I don't know why I do these things. I thought I had to prove something. I didn't want to look weak." His mother cupped his face in her hands. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Ryan. You just need to be safe. We love you. We need you here with us." The sincerity in her voice broke through Ryan's defenses. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen and understood. The walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. In the days that followed, Ryan faced charges for resisting arrest and reckless endangerment. He attended court hearings and met with a counselor assigned to him as part of a diversion program for first-time offenders. During these sessions, Ryan began to open up about his struggles, his feelings of inadequacy, his anger at the world, and his desperate need for attention. Mark visited Ryan once during this period, not as an officer but as a mentor. They sat together in a small room at the community center, talking openly. Mark shared stories from his own youth, the mistakes he had made, and how he had found purpose in helping others. Ryan listened intently, his eyes fixed on Mark. For the first time, he realized that strength didn't come from defiance but from understanding, growth, and responsibility. Slowly, Ryan started to change. He began volunteering at the local youth center, teaching younger kids how to ride bikes safely and sharing his story as they see. One afternoon, as he stood outside the youth center adjusting a kid's bike chain, Mark stopped by. Ryan looked up and smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Hey, Officer Davidson," he greeted. Mark grinned. "Just Mark today. How's it going?" Ryan wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. "Good. Really good. I'm figuring it out." Mark nodded, pride evident on his face. "I can see that. Keep it up." As Mark turned to leave, Ryan called out, "Thank you for everything." Mark paused, turned back, and gave a small, knowing nod. Then he walked away, leaving Ryan standing there, a young man transformed, ready to write a new chapter in his life. Ryan knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks and temptations, but he felt stronger now. He had learned, painfully but deeply, that fighting authority and chasing empty thrills only led to loneliness and shame. Real strength, he realized, came from facing your fears, accepting responsibility, and choosing to grow. And as the sun set over the city that once felt like his enemy, Ryan stood tall, no longer just a reckless rider on a bike, but a young man with purpose, ready to build a future worth fighting for.